When the Facebook killer was finally caught and convicted in South Africa, that should have been the end of his reign of terror. Prison officials would declare him dead within the prison walls 11 years later. But circumstances surrounding the fiery death were suspicious to many. A year later, it would be exposed that this killer had escaped prison with the help of many in power to cover it up. He then came back from the dead. You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke Makenna, and this is actually a case that has been requested, and I'm so glad that it was. I love when you guys ask for different cases to be told, because this is the wildest case that I have ever covered. Now, the reason this man was eventually caught was actually due to two reporters from groundup.org, and they have since released a book called The Thabo Story, because they had been the ones to expose this escape to the world. They even won a journalism award for their work. It took a year of this criminal being missing for anyone to even search for him or acknowledge the fact that maybe he didn't actually die that day. So let's go ahead and get into this wild story, because I promise up until the very end, it just surprises the heck out of you. So it was 2022 in South Africa, and Thabo Bester had been imprisoned at the Mangaung Correctional Center, which was a private maximum security prison. This was due to, back in 2011, he was pleading guilty to the rape of two women after luring them through Facebook to get different modeling jobs. Two women had come forward, a 24-year-old and a 26-year-old, claiming that on August 19th, 2011, and on August 26th, 2011, they had been raped. Now, the first victim was also stabbed in the face. However, it wouldn't be for another 2 months after their attacks that their attacker was arrested, and it wasn't for their attacks, it was for murder. You see, the next year in 2012, Thabo would then plead guilty to murder. The murder of his girlfriend, Nomfundo Tulu, in September of 2011. Nomfundo was found with a knife in her chest in a bed and breakfast in a guest house in Cape Town. It was a very nice area. She had checked in just hours prior, staying with Thabo Bester. Around 7 a.m. the next morning, Thabo was seen leaving on the surveillance footage. He was carrying a bag, and he spoke to the owner of the bed and breakfast, saying that he was going to leave, but his partner was still sleeping and not to mess with her until 2 p.m. He then got a ride back to Cape Town, and the owner didn't actually end up checking on Nomfundo until 9 p.m. And then they were finding it strange because they still hadn't heard from her. She hadn't come out of the guest house, and so they entered the home, and that is when they would find her body. By this point, Thabo had already boarded a flight back to where he lived in Durban. The bag that he had left with was believed to have Nomfundo's laptop as well as cell phone within it. Thabo became a wanted man for murder, for rape, for robbery, and assault. He was a known criminal, actually, known to be a scam artist who also targeted women in the media industry.
It was 2 full days of auditions, workshops, networking, judges and panels, and he was walking through the auditions. He was interviewing all of us, chatting to us casually as the producer of this new TV show.
There were very big sponsors. There were Mini and MT and an SAA, and we were supposed to be getting a car, and we were supposed to be traveling and going to different places, and we didn't really have anything concrete at the time, but at the face of it, everything seemed very professional. One of the girls Googled his name in the car, and we started seeing all these little scams that came up, from these TV presenter scams. And at that stage, I think it just shook us, because I know it seems like such a simple thing with Google being right at our fingertips, but at no point did we actually see any red flags. The production was so big, it was so elaborate, it was such an elaborate scam that we did not see any red flags at the time.
Had the police at the time maybe taken my call more seriously and investigated him further, they perhaps could have apprehended a rapist and a murderer years ago. He would have been behind bars. And subsequent to our incident, he was still around the KZN area in Durban conducting these scams. So how was it that it was so easy for him to always slip through the hands of the law each and every time?
He had multiple aliases, and his criminal record went back to when he was 19 years old. He was convicted of fraud, and he spent 2 years in jail before being paroled. Now, while he was on parole, that is when Namfundo was murdered. However, she wasn't the only victim. As the police would later find, there were 2 rape victims that happened before her as well. Thabo was known to go by 13 different aliases. He had more than 100 cell phone numbers and Facebook pages. It was not easy to track down this man who was now on the run. In fact, he was already a suspect for petty crimes in the area, and they had yet to catch them. So at this point, police in South Africa asked the media for help. They dubbed Thabo the Facebook rapist and warned the public. Now, this would lead to many tips coming in of people who said they were attacked by him, but also scammed by him. It was revealed that Thabo had created a media events company called 21st Century Media, which he alleged was connected to the 21st Century Fox, the huge media corporation. And so he had been going around scamming people out of money. Everyone wanted him locked away at this point, but it was proving much difficult than expected. No sightings of him were coming in, where he lived, and where he had boarded the plane from Cape Town to get back to in Durban. Now, on one of Thabo's Facebook pages, one of the many, he began to taunt police. He posted to Facebook, "Catch me if you can. Why are people bothering me?" Then on October 6, 2011, so a few weeks after the murder, investigators had found that Thabo was speaking to more women under a different name through Facebook and could have been luring them in for another attack. They feared he was going to strike again. And so they were really on top of it. And by chance, they were informed that a car had been hijacked in Alberton, which was 7 hours away from Durban. The vehicle was crashed, and the driver was quickly recognized as 25-year-old Thabo. Now, the officer investigating Namfundo's murder immediately headed to that scene and transported Thabo back to Durban. Then he was arrested and held on bail until the next week, where he appeared in court, and he pled guilty to the 2 counts of rape, 2 counts of robbery, and that is when he told the court that he had 3 children of his own, though this could not be confirmed. So Thabo at this time was only confessing to the rape victims who had come forward. He said that with the first victim, he had met her at a hotel, and while she was showering, he went and bought a knife and duct tape and threatened her with it. He said he was not going to rape her, but then he saw her body and he was impelled by lust to do so. Thabo explained that the second victim was a victim he knew through his girlfriend, who was not Namfundo. It was another lady, and they had met in a guest house. They went out to supper the night before. They were intimate that night, and then he held her at knife point, raped her, and took her cell phone and credit cards. But Thabo had an explanation for why he did all of this. He said that he had resorted to crime to support himself, that it was either you die or you make a plan. He explained that he was abandoned by his mother when he was young. He grew up in poverty with his grandmother, and he dropped out of school when he was in grade 5. He was then raped himself by one of his grandmother's friends when he was younger. He said due to this, he actually had to have an operation on his bottom. And then his grandmother died. He went to live with some friends and an adult who promised to look after him. However, he was locked in this adult's house for days and raped once again. He said on top of that, when he went to prison at 19, he was then gang raped. However, documents from the prison didn't mention the rape, only abuse from other inmates. Though Thabo was sobbing during this whole testimony, and he said, "I know I've done terrible things. This is not truly who I am. I want the opportunity to make things right." However, this was only the trial for the rapes and the robbery, and not yet the murder. And so for the robberies, he was sentenced to 25 years each for each count, each of the 4 counts, with 5 years suspended for each of the 2 counts of robbery. And when the interrogation footage of Thabo was released, Thabo expressed that he would have planned better if he actually wanted to kill and rape women. And after his arrest, he had been interviewed by the head of police investigative psychology, Dr. Gerard, and he told him that he couldn't plead guilty to murder because he did not intentionally kill her. That he would plead guilty to bringing the knife into her presence, and that they had fought over this knife and someone got stabbed in the process. He said if he wanted to kill her, he could have back in Durban. That he's not a stupid person, and he would have done it in a way that the cops wouldn't have known it was him. He said that he believed no one would have believed his story that this was an accident due to being accused of rape prior to the murder, so that's why he didn't call for help.
So it drained me personally, night and day. It ate me inside. I could not sleep. I felt that that's not me. And I wanted to do right where I did wrong. And I wanted to take responsibility, if that's the word. And I wanted to give the people that got hurt in the process also that thing, could say, okay, he's in jail and we've got justice, if that's what they want. I'm not somebody that you should worry about leaving a woman in one room with me that I would rape her. And I feel that my rapes, especially the rape, because the murder, I feel that it was just a pure, we fight over a knife, somebody gets stabbed in the process, and it was not, if I wanted to stab her, I could have killed her in Durban, I could have killed her the first night we got to Cape Town. So that was not my intentions at all. If I wanted to kill her, I could have got her into Mthatha, where there's much less people, and got her into a bush BNB there, killed her there. So my intentions was never to kill anyone. My intentions were, with her, was straightforward. I liked her, and things got twisted whenever they got twisted, and we had a fight. The knife got out of hand. She got stabbed. I got stabbed in the process. I tried to stop it, and there's no one in this world with 2 rape cases, and there's a knife involved, and I'm wanted by cops. If I went to the cops and said we had a fight, she got stabbed in the process, no one was going to believe me. So that's the first thing, because I thought of that. That was the first thing to do, obviously, wake up the owners of the BNB and let them come, and then call the cops and get an ambulance there. But I thought if I do that, it's like me saying, okay, I did the murder. You understand?
Because for me, what's kind of striking is that, I mean, you have the 2 rapes that occur to a week or 2 apart, and the murder was how long after that? Also about what?
A week apart.
It's as if all of a sudden something snapped and the whole ball game has changed, where it was purely in the past, financial conning, getting money, fraud, etc. It's as if it had gone on to the next level. And
one thing I also feel like, I read the papers and I feel like they're talking about somebody else, not me. I look at these charges and I don't think it's me. I really don't think it's me. I never had a life, so if I go to jail forever, if I go to jail for 50 years, a million years, I don't care. If I have to plead guilty to murder that I feel that I never did intentionally, and save the family and give the family some, how can I say, not, I don't know, maybe closure or comfort or whatever. I think I'm more willing to do that, not even caring about my personal care, because as I said, I'm the one who made her leave Johannesburg, and I'm the one who made her get to Cape Town, and I'm the one who brought in the knife. If those elements were not there, she would probably be walking in the streets right now. There's a contribution or whatever mentally that the rapes I've been through has on the rapes that I've committed. And I'm sitting in a position where I feel I want this thing to pass as soon as possible. But I also, as a human being, want to be one day free.
Then it was time for the court proceedings about the murder, and in August 2012, he confessed, hoping to get a lesser sentence through a plea deal. He made a statement to the court saying, "I am fully responsible for what I have done. I did not fully understand what I was doing in Cape Town. I have known Nomfundo for 4 years, and I have known her family. I can't believe that I am responsible for killing her. She believed in me. She supported me when I was accused of rapes in Durban. She came down to support me. She was a friend. I am sorry for what happened." Now, although little is known about the murder and how it actually occurred, the only information we have is court testimony by Thabo, who explained that their relationship started in January 2011. He had gone to a BMW dealership to purchase a car, and Nomfundo was a saleswoman there. And so after speaking about the car, the two began talking about Thabo's job in TV production. He said that she would be a good fit to star in one of his new shows he was working on, so they exchanged numbers, they kept in touch, even for the next 8 months, and that is when they met again. And at this point, Namfundo had told Thabo that she was starting a new job, so Thabo invited Namfundo on a trip to Cape Town prior to this for a photo shoot. So on September 29th, 2011, they traveled to Cape Town together and stayed in the one and only hotel for the next 2 nights. It was a 5-star hotel that cost around 13,000 Rand to 36,000 Rand per night, which would have been around 700 to 2,000 US dollars per night. By the 21st, they moved hotels to a Roman retreat, which was basically like a bed and breakfast where they got to stay in the guest house. And this is where the murder occurred. Allegedly, Namfundo believed that the two were in an exclusive relationship, and when she found out that Thabo was seeing his ex, an argument began. Now, Thabo said that they went to sleep that night, then he woke Namfundo up around 2 a.m. with a knife pointed at her, wanting her to give him her phone and laptop. She then lunged at him, trying to fight back, attempting to get the knife away from him, and Thabo would testify that they were wrestling, and suddenly Namfundo was face down on the bed with a knife in her chest. As she died, Thabo tied her hands behind her back with a t-shirt and then demanded her password for her laptop, but she didn't respond, so he fled. Now, it's unknown how much of this story was fabricated by Thabo, but he was sentenced to life plus 25 years for robbery with aggravated circumstances. And then he appealed his sentences for the rapes, and it was reduced to 30 years for those crimes. However, he still had the life sentence for murder. He was sent to Manawan Correctional Facility with maximum security, and 10 years later, Thabo would be back in the news once again, and this was due to a fire in his cell 35. It was a deadly fire, and a body had been found inside. It was burned beyond recognition, and a mattress had been set alight. On May 3rd, 2022, the Department of Correctional Services announced his death, claiming that he had committed suicide. For many, this was a relief, including the mother of the victim. She said that her nightmares had finally stopped when learning that he was dead. She had actually celebrated his death. However, this would not be the end of the horrors of this man, as you know by what we talked about in the beginning. You see, from the beginning, there was a conspiracy surrounding his death. In fact, an anonymous source told the Sunday Independent that Thabo had said he was in danger days before the fire. He told prison management that there was a hit on him by the 26 gang, and once he confided in the prison officials, they had put him in solitary confinement where he was found dead. This is when reporters from Ground Up News posted an article 4 months after the alleged death, raising questions. They reported that the Department of Corrections as well as South African police were investigating. However, DNA testing on this body had yet to be completed. This was allegedly due to the forensic reports not being given to the proper people. Prison was saying that inmates were allowed to have lighters if they would smoke, and possibly he did set himself on fire. But Ground Up then found and revealed that there was an autopsy done. These were in leaked reports, and this showed that the body in this cell had suffered head wounds and didn't experience smoke inhalation from the fire. The cause of death was head injuries that resulted in brain injuries, and this wasn't a suicide, it was a murder. Now, a judge in the area had received a complaint about this investigation, and he visited the prison, creating his own report, which was leaked by Ground Up, and this included the autopsy findings. This also allegedly revealed that the body had originally been handed over to Thabo's wife and his mother, but it was unknown if DNA testing had been done. The judge had also found that 5 inmates had died in that prison over the past year, suffering from unnatural deaths. And also that the cell where Thabo was placed was difficult to see on the CCTV cameras, and the night of the fire, smoke was reported around 3 a.m., but 50 seconds prior, 2 people were seen barely on the cameras, exiting the prison quickly. The cameras that were working were at a different angle than normal, so they could barely be seen leaving. A source came to Ground Up alleging that this death was covered up by prison officials and the police, and this source said that a few days prior to his death, Thabo was uncharacteristically happy and said he was going away soon. But 10 months after this fire, in March 2023, Ground Up reported that Thabo's customary wife, who had originally claimed the body, actually had it confiscated from her again because investigators wanted to do a further investigation. She then demanded it be returned back to her and wanted an independent autopsy to determine the cause of death, but claimed that the police had threatened her and wouldn't let her take the body. Thabo's mother said she tried to get the body and that her DNA didn't match, so she couldn't be given it. But the investigating officer claimed that his family had the body and they were no longer in possession of it. At this point, it was unknown where the body was. Ground Up did claim, though, that several of the prison officials had been suspended or dismissed after this. That same month, Ground Up then released a photo of a man in sunglasses in Santon back in June 2022, so a month after this fire, who greatly resembled Thabo. Those who were suspicious about the fire from the beginning were certain that he had escaped and that the body found belonged to someone else. There was also a little girl in this photo with this man who resembled Thabo's wife's daughter. Now, his customary wife was actually a celebrity doctor named Nandipama Gudanama. And this photo of them was actually taken because somebody had seen the celebrity doctor and wanted a photo of her. So it wasn't even about Thabo. It was about this celebrity doctor. Though these identities that were believed to be Thabo and his wife and her daughter could not be confirmed. However, it was also found that the same month that this photo had been taken, an email had been sent by a prison official to the Deputy Minister of Correctional Services asking if they were aware that an inmate who had allegedly burned to death was supposedly assisted to escape by the prison officials. That there were too many red flags in this death, and that the other officials suspected that this was an inside job from the night shift. That there was a door next to his cell that led to the exit, and those doors could only be controlled by the control room. His official claimed that he had heard nothing back from the deputy minister, and he even tried to follow up. This source said that he has reported a number of different problems at the prison and never gotten a response. And then it was found that one of Thabo's wife's businesses actually had a Zoom meeting in September 2022, 4 months after the prison fire, and there was a Zoom meeting, and on the business side was a man who resembled Thabo, who was going by TK. There was a screenshot, and this looked just like Thabo. Again, this couldn't be confirmed. By this point, 10 months after the fire, the spokesperson for the Department of Corrections gave an interview saying that they didn't have the autopsy report nor the outcome of the police investigation. However, it was then found by Ground Up that the autopsy was done a day after the fire. Thabo's wife had recently fled the mansion she was living in and had deactivated her social media accounts when this reporting of an alleged escape was coming out. It was also found that Thabo might have been running his scam from prison for his multi-million-dollar business. He was using the illegal trade of cell phones from prison officials, and he even showed up on a video call at one of his company events pretending to be the chairman named Tom. So back in 2018, when Thabo was still in prison, his 21st century media business was in the news for advertising a women in media conference. They said they were going to have Halle Berry and a lot of other celebrities as guest speakers, but the whole thing was a scam and the event was eventually canceled. Then finally, nearly a year after the fire, the Department of Correctional Services released a statement confirming that Thabo Bester had escaped. He had been using the name TK Huana and had a driver's license with this name and an ID number that did not exist. When this was revealed, clients of Thabo's wife's business came forward claiming that they had worked with this man who went by the name of TK, and that he was often difficult to work with. He was hot-headed, and he was always changing cell phone numbers. Now, DCS finally began an investigating report of the prison and the security company, which was G4S Global, and claimed that the director of the prison Thabo escaped from had lost control of the facility altogether, that he was assisted to escape from custody. They had also found that a private vehicle had entered the prison without a gate pass that day, and it was believed that this car had been been carrying the dead body placed in the cell. A private security firm named Fidelity offered an 100,000 Rand award for any information on where Thabo could be. And 11 months after the fire, in April 2023, a preliminary briefing on the escape was set. However, it had to be postponed because the security company, G4S, didn't attend. On April 8th, a press conference was held confirming that Thabo and his wife, Nadi Palma, had been arrested in Tanzania the day prior. They had several passports on them with different names, and Thabo actually had an American passport with the name Tom Williams Kelly. It was believed they were headed to Kenya. They were deported back to South Africa, and then it was found that Thabo was actually never registered in the National Population Registry when he was born. He was never officially documented as a South African citizen, even though he was born there. This time they made sure to identify this man as Thabo, and his fingerprints did identify him as the criminal. Since the body in the cell was confirmed not to be Thabo, they had an unidentified body that they needed to identify. And it turned out to be Katleho Bering. He had gone missing for 2 months before the fire, and his family had reported it 2 months later. But they said that since then they have been given conflicting statements about what happened. One officer saying that he was unconscious, he was picked up by an ambulance, and he died in the ambulance. He was then taken to a morgue as an unidentified person. And then they were claiming that his body was taken by Thabo's wife. Oddly enough, after Katleho was taken from the morgue the first time, placed in this cell, and then was taken back to the morgue without them knowing, thought to be Thabo, Thabo's wife then tried to get this body, the same body, once again, and nobody noticed. Katleho was then found to live a block away from a prison warden who had been involved in the prison at the time of the fire. Katleho had 2 children, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. Still to this day, it's unknown exactly how his death occurred, if this was murder, an accident, or natural causes.
As a family, we just want, all the puzzles to come together. We just want the answers. We just want to find out where was my son first discovered up until he was taken to the G4 cells, up until he was then taken into the correctional services. We just want those details so that we can be satisfied and so that we can have closure and so that we can know how did our son die. It's like I'm dying slowly inside because no parent, is expecting to bury his child, and let alone, this man, in this manner. This is, I cannot describe the situation that we find ourselves in. This is terrible. Quite honest, I don't wish, even if I had an enemy, I don't even wish my enemy can experience what we are experiencing now.
We want transparency, and we want everyone to be held accountable. Because how did the body ended up in jail, in a prison? And something that is very disturbing, the police claimed that Katleho was taken by the ambulance from pick up on the street, went to the hospital, that is National Hospital. So definitely there should be the medical report from the ambulance. We want to know what was the state of Katleho's body when he was picked up by the ambulance. But we want to get to the root of this thing. Why was he killed? Who killed him?
In May 2023, Parliament learned that the Department of Correctional Services had had a meeting with other departments, such as the South African Police, on October 18, 2022, 5 months after the fire, where they all confirmed that they knew that Thabo escaped. However, the search for him only began once Ground Up had exposed this in March of 2023, 10 months after the fire. G4S had to appear before the parliamentary committee and were grilled about the escape, and the committee would then hear testimony from the inspecting judge for correctional services, Edwin Camera, who admitted to being the source who leaked information to Ground Up to reveal that Thabo had been escaped after realizing they weren't doing anything. The judge minister then apologized to the victims and the people of South Africa that he had been let loose, and after a 2-day hearing, no further action occurred against the security for the prison, G4S. But 8 people were charged in connection with this escape. This was Thabo, his wife, his wife's father, and 5 prison employees, including a former prison ward who was on duty in Thabo's cell block at that time. He was also found to have bought an expensive car after the escape, was believed to have been bribed to do so. He was suspended after the murder and then he was dismissed. Thabo's wife was being charged with aiding and abetting escape, murder, and the violation of bodies and fraud. Thabo's wife's father was also arrested and charged because he was believed to be the one to bring the body of Katleho to the prison. Prison CCTV technician was also charged as he was seen walking from the room housing the CCTV servers right as the cameras stopped recording the day of the fire. Now, the murder charge was then dropped for everyone involved, and the charges that remained were violating a dead body, corruption, fraud, arson, and assisting an escape. The state believed that Thabo, his wife, and 2 employees had gone to the morgue in April to use a body there as a decoy. However, the plan fell through and a body was actually disposed of in the river before Katleho was ever taken. However, they did it again, getting Katleho's body, pretending to be employees of the hospital in May, and this time they succeeded in going through with their plan. The body of Katleho, stolen from the morgue, was then left in the burning cell, and his family is angered by all the unanswered questions about his death. They have not been told anything, especially before Thabo was found, and then they were only asked for DNA samples. They had no idea what was going on. And so finally, a year after the fire, Katleho's family were able to get his body to hold a funeral for him, but they still don't understand why the murder charges for his body were dropped, and they plan to sue the state. The CCTV technician claimed that he was offered 2.5 million rand to tamper with the cameras. And police officer Flyman testified that Thabo's wife's father had rented the car at the airport to use to get into the prison to get the body there. Thabo's wife had told the morgue that the body was a friend of hers brother. This friend was Zanda Moyo, and she was arranging the funeral for his brother. A fake funeral was even held. However, not with the body, because the body was smuggled into the prison in a TV cabinet by Thabo's wife's father. He drove it inside, the car was never searched, and the TV was placed in the prison workshop. Officials then took it to the prison yard and then into the cell. Thabo then escaped wearing a prison warden uniform. One of the employees was found to facilitate the escape, another to disconnect the cameras, another to open the doors. There were many moving parts here. But Thabo's wife's father was granted bail first, and the 5 prison officials accused were demanding bail in order to take care of their families, but at this time 4 out of the 5 were granted this. Thabo and his wife withdrew their bail applications, and Thabo's wife began to claim that she was actually abducted in Tanzania by South African authorities. This is when a 9th suspect was charged. This was Zanda Moyo, the same name that Thabo's wife had used to get the body out of the morgue. It was found that he had access to an Airbnb where all of these different people were staying, and he was believed to go to the morgue as well. 3 more people after this were arrested, and they turned out to be more prison officials. At this point, 5 more of the accused were granted bail. So on August 8th of 2023, 12 people were scheduled to go to trial for this escape. And just before, Thabo and his wife claimed that they were enduring inhumane treatment while in custody, that 400 million rand was confiscated during their arrest and was still missing. Then Thabo's wife was claiming she had actually been kidnapped by Thabo and she wanted bail. This was denied, and it was believed that she was actually the mastermind of his escape. So the trial was postponed until February 2023, and 3 of the 12 accused, the 3 with the least charges, actually had all of their charges withdrawn and they were released. So this was leaving 9 to be convicted.
You had spent 29 days in jail from the point of your arrest to when you had been released on bail in May. Just a couple of hours ago, all the charges against you were dropped. Do you feel vindicated?
Yes, I've been saying from day one that I'm innocent. I've never done anything. I don't even know what happened that night. I've been maintaining that I do not know. I do not know. I do not know. I've been maintaining from day one. I have never done anything wrong, and I've never been part of any of this. Some family members distance themselves. People that I thought were my friends distance. You know, people don't want to be associated with somebody that helped a rapist and a murderer escape. I mean, for something like this, if I had done this, I would have taken full responsibility for it. I don't have any problem taking responsibility for my wrongdoing. But now you are in the situation whereby you know for a fact that you are innocent, and now your kids also has to suffer.
Then the trial was postponed again till June due to many of the accused replacing their lawyers. The prosecutor said it was just a waste of time. There has still been little to no action or signs of accountability of the security company by Parliament or Correctional Services, and now the trial of the accused involved in this will have to wait for another 4 months. Isn't this the wildest case you've ever heard? To allegedly have gotten so many prison officials to aid in a killer's escape is terrifying. Now we know that the criminal justice system in South Africa is horrific. The violence against women especially is just completely overlooked. Nobody seems to care. There's so much violence and crime there. It's terrifying, and I send so much love to people who live there and have to endure that. But for the police not to even search for him or to warn the public after nearly a year, especially when they allegedly knew 5 months in for certain that he had escaped. This man didn't even go into hiding either. He was out, he was running a business, he was living a normal life, and nobody noticed, or if they did, they kept it a secret. A secret that could have been deadly or horrific to many more women if he did continue his crimes, and unfortunately we don't know if he committed any of the more crimes in that year, if he had raped any more women, if he killed anybody else. We don't know. However, we do know that he was still scamming people. Should the G4S security company be held accountable for their employees who aided in this escape? Should DCS be held accountable for keeping this to themselves allegedly? For not acting sooner? There seems to be so many levels of corruption here, and the fact that this trial just keeps getting pushed off like it's not a big deal, it's infuriating. It's scary. Almost an entire year where everyone was led to believe they didn't have to worry about this killer because he had died. He had taken his own life, and to know he was just walking the streets right next to them that entire time with not even a parole officer because everybody thought he was dead, or they let everyone believe he was dead, so nobody was watching him. He could have literally been doing anything he wanted. Oh, this one gets me so angry. And you guys know cases in South Africa, they hit my heart in such a different way because I feel like these victims and these individuals are screaming for help and just are not receiving it at all. I will link some cases that I've done from over in South Africa because I think that they're so important to get out there and to help vocalize for the South African women who are screaming and screaming into the void. I don't want that to be the case, and I want to help them as much as I can. Have you heard of this? Have you heard of anything like this? How in the world did this occur? Do you think that these 9 individuals who are accused are actually going to be convicted and kept in prison? Or do you think slowly they're just going to withdraw all the charges from everyone except for Thabo? I cannot tell you how angry the thought of that makes me feel, but it's something we have to consider them doing, considering the other tragedies in this story. Lack of investigating, lack of movement, lack of accountability. It definitely does make you want to look into this certain prison or prisons in South Africa to see if this has happened before. To see if the inmates who they say are dead are really just out there living life once again. Whew, let me know all your thoughts on this case, and don't forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay.